Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. It's Tuesday where we talk about relationships and communication. And today we have a guest, Lee Owens. Welcome, Lee. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Tara right away because I know we've got a lot to cover and we want to dive in. And so, Tara, take us away. Introduce us to Lee.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share this briefly and then we're going to dig into, I know what is going to be an unbelievably juicy conversation, but I would be remiss if I didn't share the history of how I know Lee Mitchell Owens. And she was friends with my first husband during high school, but I didn't meet her until they were both students at the University of Georgia. And I was dating my now ex-husband, but very good friend, Billy. And Lee you could always count on Lee for a party. I mean, she was always up, always kind of on that super high vibration. And there was not an alcohol or a pill that she would not at least give a shot to. And she just was a delight. I didn't know her that well, and we'll dig into why really nobody knew her that well. But we certainly lost touch when I started having babies like a kitten, and she stayed single. So fast forward 30 years, y'all. We connected on Facebook and jumped on a Zoom call, and her experience and the way she brings it to the world with such wisdom and knowledge is like nothing I have ever experienced. And I've read a lot of books and learned a lot about therapy and psychology, but Lee is going to blow your mind. So let me share her bio, and then we're going to dig in with some great questions. Lee Mitchell Owens is a licensed professional counselor, mental health service provider. Since 2012, she has been in private practice, specializing in trauma and addiction for an overflow of patients. She uses trauma-informed models of therapy, specifically internal family systems, which is not what you think it is, to help her patients discover the systems working in tandem or conflict within their own physiology. For over 15 years now, Lee has also worked at a women's homeless shelter. She teaches classes and facilitates group therapy for their 18-month treatment program. Lee's journey toward helping others suffering from emotional or behavioral challenges began in 1991 when she went into a 30-day residential treatment center. She has been on the road of recovery for the past 33 years. She remained sober for 7 years. Then she struggled in a relapse for 7 more years and has now been sober for over 19 years. Lee holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree in mental health counseling from Lincoln Memorial. She lives in Knoxville, Tennessee with her husband of 16 years. So officially welcome you, my old, new, dear friend.
Yay!
Yay. So this is what we thought we would do because she has so much wealth to share. We're going to break this apart a little bit. And Lee has a really rich understanding of addiction and trauma and how those go together. But she also has a rich understanding of other ways that people engage in behaviors to, let me see how I wrote this, to disconnect from pain. And some of that stuff is really eye-opening to those of us who aren't struggling with addiction. Or maybe we are. So we're going to try to save that for next week. And we're going to stick to, I think, trauma and addiction as the world sees it. We're going to start with that. So Lee, I don't want to spend too much time on your background, but if you could share with our listeners just a little bit of, I shared the journey of your addiction, but you have this litany, this list of addictions that you've suffered from. So alcohol was just the tip of the iceberg. Tell us a little bit more about what you were suffering from and how you view that today.
Okay. So I did go to rehab in 1991 to the Betty Ford Clinic out in Palm Springs, California. And I thought I was just going for a little cocaine problem and I would go for a little R&R and come back and I'll be good. And I got there and they were like, well, you are alcohol dependent, you're alcoholic, you're drug dependent, you're nicotine dependent, you have an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, anxiety, depression, male codependency, and this long laundry list of diagnosis that I was like, what? right? What in the ever-loving world? And so, yes, so that journey from 1991 till now I've just walked that journey of healing. And now I really do not struggle with any of those outwardly symptoms, but still, and I told you that I'm still in trauma therapy myself, working the model that I'm going to share with you to heal our inner world, because this is really where most of life is lived anyway.
Yes, so beautiful. Would you tell us, before we dig into the model and why you so much believe in it, would you tell us maybe what surprises people most about the intersection of trauma and addiction?
Well, trauma in and of itself, all trauma means is that someone faced a situation in their life that overwhelmed their ability to cope. So a lot of people would probably say, well, I don't have any trauma, like I don't have trauma, but they still won't understand why they do the things they do, why they experience the feelings that they experience internally, why they have anxiety or depression or the things that a lot of people struggle with. They won't know why they have that. And so helping people to understand that most of us do not get to adult life without having some type of hardship that overwhelmed our ability to cope. And most of that happens between the ages of 0 and 12. And so when we have the least resources, right, to be able to cope.
Yeah, yeah. I want to dive into something that I asked you when we kind of prepared for this,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought that I knew the answer, but the way that you emphatically answered it, I think is helpful to all of us. And the question was this: if someone is able to control their addiction,
Yes.
whether it's something, really, dangerous like alcohol or drugs, or something maybe less dangerous like shopping,
Mhm.
which can, they all can be dangerous. If someone is able to understand the dopamine behind it and really control this addiction, if they don't uncover the
Mhm.
emotions that were driving it in the first place, will they always live in a state of feeling that they have to be in control and a little bit deprived, like that wanting state?
I hate to use the word always because in the realm of people, there's never an always, but I would say most of the time, yes, because all of the behaviors, which I think you will show the little triangle
Yes.
model of IFS, is that underneath in our subconscious level, the thing that's really driving everybody's life that we don't know about are all of the unconscious emotions and feelings that are driving all of the behaviors the external behaviors that we can see. So just because we reel it in, if we've never tapped into the emotions underneath it, then we've just subdued the behavior, which is good. I mean, there's a value in that, right? There's a value. However, the emotions underneath it will still be there.
Mm-hmm.
The pain, the pull of
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I shared this with my husband, that you said this
Okay.
yesterday. We were out
Okay.
for a walk, and
Yes.
he said, then he said, "Do you still want cigarettes?"
Mm.
And I said, "No, I don't still want cigarettes." He
Mm-hmm.
said, "What was the emotion that were driving that?" And um, I can't really pinpoint it.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to you and knowing that emotions were driving it from the very beginning is really, really enlightening. Tell us about some patients that you see when they hit that kind of light bulb moment.
Well, I see it every day because most people come in, because I work with trauma and addiction, most people come in to stop some type of behavior that they have and they want to get rid of it. And we really approach this from a place of love, and we can say, can you understand like how this behavior is actually protecting you? And I've got a great example, Tara. So was working with a heroin addict, who wanted to get sober, but he never could. So he's just in chronic relapse. And most people have a harsh judger inside themselves who are shaming them constantly for the behavior. So we just kind of say, can you just take judgment and just put it over here? And if don't judge, and let's just kind of look at this with a curious mind and say, okay, so when you do heroin, what is the need that heroin meets for you? Like, what does it do for you? And a lot of people can't just answer that right off the cuff. They don't know what it does, but if you press in and you think about it, finally he said, well, it helps me not be scared. And I said, okay. And I said, so what, you don't really have a heroin problem, you have a fear problem.
Mm.
Right. And it was the way he was managing his paralyzing, crippling fear. And of course, most addictions that people do create a cycle, like a vortex of it alleviates it on the initially, only followed by the surge, right, of more intensity of an urge. So recognizing that and helping people see that versus just thinking they're an awful, terrible person, that they're doing bad things, that they can't get clean. And it's just this negative place when they can actually see what it's doing for them. I smoked cigarettes for years. I know exactly what nicotine did for me. I mean, it helps. Nicotine is a way that helps you to be distracted. Right?
Okay.
People smoke, what do? You get up and you walk around, you inhale, you exhale, you inhale, you exhale, right? And then you march all around and then you come back. It's a distractor.
Okay. Wow. So what do you say to people? And we are going to get to your model, I promise. But
Oh, no, that's fine.
what do you say to people who, okay, they've overcome the physical withdrawals of a true addiction, like alcohol, nicotine, heroin, any of those, that's out of their system.
Yes.
And they're sitting in a moment saying to themselves, because I did this with cigarettes, and I don't mean to
Yes.
compare it to something like
No,
alcohol.
that's fine.
Nothing else freaking matters except for getting to cigarettes. I mean, I had pulled them out of the trash before. What do you say to them in that moment?
Pay attention to what you're thinking and what you're feeling in your body. Because the answers are all that we have the answers. Every answer that we need is on the inside of us. It's all there. Everything that we've ever experienced is going to be in our unconscious right brain. Most of it's like Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score, right? Our body knows if we'll pay attention. Just being in attunement, we can figure it out. Had a lot of people come and think that this is so stupid, especially very, very, very bright, smart, intellectual people who are left brain dominant, right, in their logical linear brain. And I'll ask them, have you ever thought about that not every thought is your own? And that if you think about what you're thinking about. And this guy, he worked out at Y12. He was a physicist out at Y12. He said, well, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. And I said, okay. And I was like, well, I just want you to do it. I said, you're a researcher and you're a scientist, so just make yourself an experiment. When you go home this week, anytime that you're mad, sad, or anxious, I just want you to stop for a minute and I want you to write down what you're thinking and what you feel in your body. And I want you to just come back and report it to me.
Okay.
And he comes back and he was like, holy shit. And I was like, exactly. Right. I mean, there's so much happening that we don't pay attention to. So we're just kind of all on autopilot, but the answers are there.
Okay.
Right. So yesterday I had somebody come in who has an alcohol problem, but she doesn't want to quit drinking. And I said, okay, so there's a part of you that drinks too much and there's a part of you that wants you to stop. And you're kind of in conflict with these two parts of yourself. And so I gave her the same prescription as I give everybody. I said, well, I want you to go home and I want you to pay attention and I want you to see when you have an urge, because she said, I don't have an urge. I just want to drink. And I said, that's what most people say. And I said, but to ruin your life at the level that you're telling me that it's ruining your life makes absolutely zero sense, that we just say, I just want to do it because I enjoy it. Like, there's nothing enjoyable about losing your marriage, your job, your children, and all of your relationships.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a reason why people are doing it. They just don't know what it is.
It seems to me that what people at the end of the day, if they're not sacrificing their health, they're sacrificing relationships, which really leads to everything, right?
Everything. Yes. Yes. Lots of people who've studied addiction, way smarter than me, like Gabor Mate and Dick Schwartz and all of them say, that the opposite of addiction is not abstinence, it's connection.
Say that one more time.
The opposite of addiction is not abstinence, it's connection.
That just gives me chills. It makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense because addiction is very isolating, no matter what addiction. If it's alcohol, drugs, pornography, sex, shopping, gambling, gaming, you name uh, those, drugs and alcohol are substance abuse addictions, but we have process addictions in America now that really everybody is distracted, disconnected, checked out. And our iPhones and stuff just make it so much easier that we don't even really know we're doing it.
And what we're sacrificing, we don't see.
We don't see it. No, we don't. It's really kind of an unconscious thing that we don't know that we're doing until we bring our attention to it. You can bring, people say, well, how do I make my unconscious conscious? And I said, you just pay attention, right? Like if you and I we don't really pay attention to our heart beating at all. But if we all paused right now and we were really quiet, we could probably feel our heartbeat. We could maybe even, touch up in our chest and feel it. We could hear it. Because we brought our attention to it. We're paying attention and tuning in. We can hear it.
Mm. I've always thought, Lee, that certain, maybe just even genetics, but maybe it's more, environmental, that certain people have only so much capacity for connection. Like I'm all about really deep connection and talking about real stuff. And I get anxious when we're just talking about the weather and sports and things I don't know about. Is there some genetic piece of that, or the people that aren't really wanting to connect with others, can you just blanket that as fear?
That's a great question, because everyone will have their own experiences differently, but human beings are mammals and we are created for connection. We are created to be together. We're created to be connected, but that goes all the way back to relational trauma and attachment wounds in people's lives. If they did not have safe relational connection in which their goodness was mirrored to them in those years between the ages of 0 and 12, then connection for many, many people can feel frightening.
Okay, hang on. You said that they needed a safe early upbringing where their goodness was mirrored to them. Tell me about that.
So because you were a mom, right? When you look at your babies, babies are looked at with delight, right? Yes. And pleasure. And there's an attunement happening between the caregiver and the infant. People can look this up on YouTube. It's about the attachment, because they've done so many studies on attachment and secure attachment. When people have secure attachment in their young life, then attachment later in life feels safe. But some people did not get that. Well, I'll just give myself as an example. And this has nothing to do with love. It has everything to do with generational ability, right? So both my parents' mothers were alcoholics. So both my grandmothers were alcoholic. So my mom nor my dad got any type of nurture or anything because their mothers were physically incapable of doing it. And so they didn't have nurture to give. They didn't know how to mirror. My mom was filled with anxiety and fear. And so that's what was translated to me. So inside my little nervous system as a baby, my nervous system was dysregulated from the get-go.
Wow. That is so fascinating.
That's the springboard for life and relationships later, where it doesn't feel safe to be connected, even if it is safe. So in trauma therapy, what we really get people to do is start to notice, like I was telling you, notice what you're thinking and feeling, notice what's in your body, and then notice we have to learn. So we learned how to feel unsafe, and we can learn how to feel safe. In relationships, it's learning how to feel safe when we are safe. Many people in trauma never feel safe. They know, even if they are safe, they don't feel safe. Their body is always in either hyper aroused, which is what you described of me, which is exactly my life, right? I lived in this hyper aroused, nervous energy, frantic energy state, which was really disconnecting me from myself and others, but I didn't know that. And people can be on the other end of that spectrum of the polyvagal where they're hypoaroused, which would look like depression and lethargy and can't do
Okay.
anything, and they're disconnected that way too. Both sides of the spectrum are disconnected.
And did you tell me that, and I won't get these words exactly right, that when we are afraid of, kind of to use a trendy word, being seen,
Yes.
is that because we're being driven by shame a lot of
Yes.
times?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell
Yeah,
us
people don't
more.
know it though. They will say, well, I don't feel shame. And I was like, I help them to start to see as you unpack the layers, it's there. Like shame is there. They're not feeling it because we've learned a variety, multiple ways not to feel the shame, right? Either we disconnect, we check out, we do something. People will say, well, I'm angry. And I was like, well, anger's most of the time, especially if it's inappropriate anger, meaning that we're angry and we're not being violated, because anger is a healthy emotion when our boundaries are being violated, or when things are unjust and not right, we should be angry, right? But if we just explode at someone or rage at someone, and there's no really deserved reason that we would do that, shame is lurking somewhere, you can bet.
It's so powerful. So to try to bring some organization to this, I want you to
Yes.
give us an overview of the model that you so much depend on and that you've really kind of customized to your patients. And then I'll show a visual of it, but I want you to explain what is IFS, internal family systems. And y'all, just spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with your family.
No,
So
that has
explain
everything to
to us
do.
about internal family systems.
Okay. Internal family systems describes a way that we experience ourselves. And most people would have maybe heard like, different hats. I have a mom hat, a wife hat, a girlfriend hat, how we show up, professionally, personally, in our intimate relationships. We all have different parts of our personality that kind of show up at for whatever resources we need. Internal family systems is a model that helps us to know some of our parts are burdened. And a burden means it's taken on a false belief, like I'm bad, I'm unworthy, I'm not good, I have to make everybody else happy to stay safe. All of those are false beliefs that people hold that drive a lot of their behavior. So internal family systems created by Dick Schwartz, it's not a new model, it's been around for 40 years. And he created that said inside of everybody is like an essence or a goodness, which he calls self energy. Self is inside of everybody, even though it might be covered up by parts. And that self actually has the healing power to heal all of our parts. And the way I kind of like to describe it in a nutshell is trauma. You can exchange trauma and fear. Trauma blocks love, and love heals trauma, or love heals fear.
Okay, so I think that's worthy of repeating that one more time because it's just like.
Yes. So trauma, people can exchange the word trauma or fear, but trauma blocks love, and love heals trauma. Love heals, and we all have it within us. It is there. And that is why this model helps people to understand their parts, kind of like we've talked about, learning how to notice and name them. And then when we notice and name them, we can start the journey of understanding and healing. Not just people want to heal, like I want to stop smoking, drinking, shopping, having sex, being anxious, whatever it is that people don't like about themselves. And they start trying to heal themselves from the outside in, but that never works. It just doesn't work. This model takes you underneath the behaviors. We actually don't really we only look at the behaviors to see, because behaviors are a symptom. What's underneath, and you come underneath. And when you heal the root, these things take care of themselves.
Okay. All right. So here we have a model of it. So tell us about these parts. Visuals like this, I hate because people are going to try to read it. So y'all try not to read it and listen to Lee, and then I can share it.
Yes. We're trying to like sum up this whole big, huge thing in a nutshell. So in this triangle, what this is showing is on the left side of the triangle. Manager parts of people are all the parts of us that that want us to do good and be good, right? So those are all of our people pleasers, perfectionists, our inner critic, intellectualizing are going to be managers. On the opposite side of this upside down triangle are what IFS calls firefighters. Firefighters are parts of people's systems that want to bring them relief and comfort at any cost. Okay, at any cost.
I think that's worthy of saying again. Firefighters are, say it again.
Firefighter parts of people's personalities want to bring them relief and comfort, right, at any cost. So what does that mean at any cost? Kind of what we were talking about, the heroin user and the alcoholic, like when he was flooded with an immense amount of fear, his firefighter, the part of him that used heroin, is going to use heroin to extinguish what he felt was an intolerable fear response. So that's what firefighters do, right? They come in and they just extinguish the fire. And that's why they've called them firefighters. They extinguish the fire of emotional pain. And where's the emotional pain? At the bottom of the triangle, this is what they've called exiles. And exiles are parts of our personality that have been exiled out of our conscious awareness. It's things that we don't want to think about, right? Shame, fear, loneliness, sorrow, rejection, when we're hopeless, overwhelmed, sad, right? We don't want to feel that stuff. So we just kind of push it down in any way that we can. And when you have decades and decades of that kind of stuff, we really don't even know what we're feeling. We just have behaviors.
So we have manager behaviors and firefighter behaviors, all trying to push out the exiles. Is correct. Really you're saying.
Yes. And helping people understand their own on each side of that triangle is what we do to help. I think the title of your podcast today was like understanding the behaviors that plague us. And that's the generic little model.
I am beyond grateful that you're going to be with us next week because I don't know about everybody else, but I just find this beyond empowering. But I want to bring Catherine in before we run out of time and see if she has any questions, thoughts. And we can take a few questions possibly. So if you just have a burning question and you can't be here next week, raise your hand for sure. But Catherine, talk to us.
I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. I love IFS. I've known about it for a long time, but never done a ton of work in it. I guess my question would be if you're experiencing like an urge, like I recently stopped drinking, but I realized that now I want to eat. So I'm realizing it actually wasn't the drinking. It was like, there's an urge, underneath it, right? So it's like, so I like what you said about slow down, see what's happening. What are you feeling, thinking?
Yes.
Is that it seems so simple, but is that the only recommendation or is there something else to really?
Well, it's, everything builds on itself. I mean, the model gets so much deeper, but then you don't want to overwhelm people. So in the beginning, right, to just make it simple that you don't get overwhelmed, we would just start with, okay, so notice what you're thinking and feeling, because ultimately you're going to get to know that part of you because there's a part of you that's having this behavior because there's another part of you that's probably feeling something that you don't want to feel. That's outside your conscious awareness. So the distraction is the drinking or the food. So we just stay up here trying to stop the behaviors, right? Without understanding that the behaviors are really trying to soothe some type of emotion that you're not aware of.
Got it.
And then we get to know that part, and it's just really sweet because ultimately we can unburden the part. And when you unburden the part of you that is holding the distress, then the desire and urge to drink and eat diminish and what we call soften. They just soften and you don't have that urge. Like, I just want something right now. I need something.
Well, I love that because what I've noticed is the feeling feels like it's going to kill me. Like it is awful, like the whatever that is. So I love what you're saying. I have to remind myself, like, this is just a feeling, it'll pass. Like it's fine. The mind feels like, oh my gosh, what is this? You
That's
know?
exactly, there's so much there, Catherine. I would love to explore that because yes, that's especially sitting with the feelings and can you tolerate the feeling for 1 second? And if the feeling could talk, what would it say?
Got it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. All
Uh,
right, Kara, back to you.
yeah, I mean, I don't really want to close us out because I have to wonder, um, and maybe you can just give us a tip and then I will close us out because we're up on time. But when someone says, I know something's wrong, well, what is it? I don't know. What do you say to that?
I would say, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. There are reasons for everything. And when we can understand the reasons, and I can help you to understand the reasons, everything will make sense. And when it makes sense, you'll understand it. We have fragments. We have fragments in here, and a healthy brain is a unified brain. So when we understand our story, when we understand, it just makes sense. And when it makes sense, people's nervous systems just start to settle into that space that we're designed to be. Right. Instead, I understand Catherine's that because I had that too. It feels like you're going to die if you don't do whatever it is that this part is urging you to do. And that's common in every single person that struggles.
I think to normalize that is so important because it feels crazy to
It
me
does.
that you're in
Uh-huh.
conflict with yourself
That's
about
right.
it.
That's right.
That
But see,
that feels out of control.
it does. And that's why people love this model because what's out of control are the two parts of you, your manager parts that are going, stop eating, stop drinking. What are you doing? And yelling inside. And then the part of you that actually now wants to do it more. And
Right.
probably because if you look at the bottom of the triangle that Tara shared, it's because the inner critic is creating the shame and flooding the system with overwhelm. And the firefighters are trying to do their job to extinguish that.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
the more we yell at ourselves, the stronger the urge, the more we're going to act out. And it just becomes, you just get stuck in that triangle spiral.
Wow. Tough for an intellect because you're like looking at it from the outside in going, that if anybody else were doing that, I would be like, you crazy. But it's me, you know?
It's you and so many other people. So yes, we can normalize that and then help you to see you're not crazy. It actually makes perfect sense that your
Right.
system is working like that.
Right. I love that. Oh, I can't
Mhm.
wait for next week.
All right. I am gonna close us out with our tenants, but I'm gonna tie them back to you, Lee, because um, what you have experienced and your ability to communicate it is the most beautiful form of love, and that's one of our
Oh,
tenants. So thank
I
you for
love
that.
that.
My heart feels so light and so amazed right now as I knew that it would. So
Yes.
go out there, y'all, and lead with love. And the other is to give. I mean, you just came on, trusted me. What is this daily huddle thing? And you're just like spitting wisdom and gold. I mean, it's just mind blowing. So continue to give like Lee has today. And y'all haven't really seen too much of this side of Lee, but remember to laugh.
Oh my God.
Because when things get hard, there's nothing better than some laughter. And
Oh my
please
God.
take care of yourself. That means to put more plants in your body, get your sleep, reduce your stress by understanding your IFS, and make sure you get up and get some physical activity. Lee, don't leave, but we're going to put our video on and
Okay.
and stop the recording. But thank you all
Okay.
so much for enjoying the gift of Lee Mitchell Owens.
Yes.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Lee.
so much.